Well, good morning. Welcome, CHD, and happy Friday. I am your favorite host for CHD TV, Dr. Brian Hooker, and this is Doctors and Scientists. And, we've had a stretch where we've had some like non-doctors and non-scientists on, but we have a really special treat today because we have coming back the acclaimed author, Dr. Clayton Baker. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you? I love the hat, by the way. And, totally happy that in the role that you're playing in making America healthy again.
Well, thanks very much for having me. And thanks for allowing me a shameless plug of my new book.
If you do not have this book, you really need to have it because, Dr. Clayton Baker is one of the best and most, I think there's a lot of jocularity in what you write, and there is a lot of common sense in what you write. It's like, gosh, I wish I would have written that. And Clayton, we had an opportunity to write a few essays together. The book is called The Medical Masquerade. The subtitle, I have to look, A Physician Exposes the Deceptions of COVID. And this is a compilation of essays and other writings by Dr. Clayton Baker. You can get this at Amazon, you can get it at Lulu, and you can also get it at Barnes and Noble. And what you need to do is you need to buy the book, and then you need to write a review. And I am remiss because I have not written my review yet, even though I got a signed copy of the book for free and everything. So Clayton, good job on the book. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm one behind you, but I'm trying to catch up.
Well, we're getting there. I mean, you're actually tied because I've only written one book.
Okay.
I've only written, and the second one is on the way. But it's a slog. It's slow going. It's not like we haven't been busy. I mean, making America healthy again is playing whack-a-mole. And off camera, one of the things that you pointed out is that we're right at about 100 days into the Trump administration with making America healthy again. And I think it's really important to step back. This is yours, so I'm going to take it and use it. But it's so important to step back and look at our victories. Let's look at our wins. Let's look at the things where over the past 100 days, we have made headway in making America healthy again. So Clayton, reel some off for us really quickly.
Sure. Well, one, that happened pretty much day one with Trump's administration taking over January 20th or 21st, right, was noting that we are leaving the WHO, which if you read my book, you'll see several articles in there devoted to that topic. And I think it was absolutely an essential thing for us to do to maintain, frankly, sovereignty of our country in general and with regard to healthcare. And also, I think it really puts the pressure on all the bad actors in the WHO because the gravy train is drying up for them. And when we see all of the things that they're doing, trying to push through another pandemic accord, thank goodness we're not privy to that right now. So that's a big one. I think the second one that comes immediately to mind is, even though it was very difficult to accomplish, I think the batting average was pretty high in getting good people into HHS. Obviously, Bobby Kennedy is the cornerstone.
Right.
Jay Bhattacharya, of course, is kind of being universally praised for what he's doing. He's such a wonderful guy and such a likable guy and such a courageous guy that he's one of those people that kind of you can't really say bad things about. And I've been really impressed with how Marty Makari's been doing so far. I think he handles the spotlight extremely well. I think he brushes off a lot of the nonsense gotcha questions that he gets thrown at him. And I think they're being very systematic in the way that they're approaching things. It's a little slow for a lot of our tastes. A lot of us want to see everything happen at once, but you and I were talking off camera about how important these step-by-step wins are. You know, the food
Right.
dyes one doesn't seem to be a big one to some people, but it's a huge first step because it's really hard to argue with the notion that we really don't want petroleum in our children's food. And once you start getting people's through the sort of so-called normies minds that
Right. Right.
what we're trying to do is really make people healthy, not just ban something that we don't like. I think people jump on board, and I think people really understand that that really is the intent. And they also, I think, really understand that that's the opposite of the intent of the people that we're opposing, who are simply trying to take advantage with foods that make us unhealthy, that are perhaps cheaper, that are perhaps easier to produce, that are perhaps even part of a more diabolical plan. And
Right.
it's hard to argue that you don't want to eat petroleum. It's hard to argue that you want children's lunches to be healthy rather than garbage. I love the comment that Bobby made a couple of days ago where he said, our kids aren't eating food a lot of the time. They're eating food-like substances. And it's hard to argue with that. And so I think that these are early wins. But I think, and then he's very systematic. He not sneaks in, but adds in comments about vaccines and so on. We're seeing more and more data coming out about just how problematic even the more traditional vaccines are, that I think
Right.
we're really moving forward.
We really are. I'm so glad that you brought it up, and I think it's important to take a step back and look at the wins that have happened. I mean, people started getting their measuring sticks out with Secretary Kennedy about a week into his tenure as the HHS secretary, and it seemed like, wow, it's taken a long time to break the system. It's not going to be fixed overnight. And getting back to these dyes, one of the things about the petroleum industry that I know about, I used to be an insider. My undergrad was in chemical engineering. I've seen quite a few petroleum refineries in my day, and I know that petrochemicals are a big deal, and petrochemicals are a big winner for the petroleum industry. So those things, getting it, it's not by accident that we have petroleum products in our food, because that's a part of the specialty market of petroleum products. And so, getting us off of those non-natural products, those things that cause specific cancers, especially in organs that are involved in detoxifying petroleum products, the cancers are myriad, and other issues like endocrine disruption, neurological issues in our children, ADD, ADHD, can point back to these fundamental things that have happened with our food that is not food substances, and the fact that there is a push for us to eat more natural food, eat more healthy food. These are big wins. They're really big. They may seem incremental, but they're absolutely big wins.
No, I would agree. And I think that, there are things that we'd like to see happen. There are things that are bigger wins. But I
Right.
think you get those wins that you can early on, and you continue to do it. I think there were other things. You and I were both very deeply involved in a couple of the articles in my book that you and Heather Ray helped write. We were some of the more involved people in the whole bird flu issue, slightly prior to the election and immediately thereafter. And of course, that chapter's not quite closed yet, but
Right.
there was some real success there. That was clearly a landmine that was thrown out to derail Secretary Kennedy, to derail Secretary Rollins, to make Trump look terrible. And, with the help of people in the movement, I think we played a small part. I think others, Peter McCulloch, I know the people at FLCCC, now Independent Medical
Right.
Alliance, that I'm affiliated with as well. They played a big role in it. And what happened is that was thwarted largely, at least for the time being. and it's going to take time. And you mentioned the FDA. The FDA is not completely under Dr. Markari's control yet. There's still a
Right.
lot of people. You can imagine if the Department of Defense is continuing to leak things on Signal to make Pete Hegseth look bad, what's going on at HHS? We're still getting things pushed through and okayed and fast tracked and so on. I doubt very much that if Dr. Markari had complete institutional control of FDA right now, that fast track would have gone through, but it did. And
Right.
it's just something that they have to reel these people in. They have to get rid of the bad actors. And I think getting rid of people like Peter Marks, and I hope that they really put Shimabukuro up on criminal charges. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think
Right.
getting those kind of people out of the system is absolutely gigantic. And so I think there's been a lot of wins. It's incremental, and I'm optimistic.
Me too. I mean, it makes such a huge difference, having people like Francis Collins on the out and Jay Bhattacharya on the ins, instead somebody that was actually, the NIH had a really acrimonious relationship with Jay Bhattacharya and actually condemned him, for his position regarding, these faultily put together, hastily approved COVID-19 vaccines that, really did nothing but cause carnage. Having somebody like a voice like Bhattacharya, like you said, Marty Makary, in these positions with the stances that they took during COVID-19 is really absolutely amazing. And I know, these individuals like Peter Marks, Francis Collins, that have left the HHS in general. I'm sure that there are landmines that they have set to go off. One of them is now, the fact that the vaccine safety data link has gone back to the HMOs, that is essentially no longer accessible, that from what I've heard off the table from public consumption. And that is really, really too bad. And that should rest on the shoulders of Tom Shimabukuro and then people at the National Center for Health Statistics like Peter Meyer, who was in charge of the vaccine safety data link, for dismantling that. I mean, really, if there's something that is severe, that has gone wrong, that they're trying to hide, then it needs to be exposed. This needs to come forward. And I'm also very, impressed and heartened by the efforts of people like Senator Ron Johnson to bring these people to account.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, and again, we don't know exactly what the timeline is. We're still early on in this administration. If there's one, I'm here preaching for patience, I guess, in a way, or preaching for a measured optimism rather than this hurry, hurry, hurry kind of attitude that we see so much, and understandably so to some extent.
Right.
If there's one area where I still get frustrated, it's with DOJ right now. I don't know why, when we see this, how long is it going to be before someone's in handcuffs, quite frankly? And I hope it's not too long, because I think that's what's going to make people really turn. I think that, they've got enough. Look, I'm no lawyer, and anyone who uses a doctor for their lawyer as a fool for a client. But that being said, they've already got tons of data on the FOIA lady Moore, and on Morens and so on, about falsifying and destroying data. Those are exactly the kind of mid-level people that need to go in front of the FBI and explain their actions. And I have a feeling you'd find out an awful lot very quickly if you took Shimabukuro in there and said, look, what happened to this data? We need to know right now, or you know what? If it disappears, you're responsible for it. We've got however many felony breaches of the National Records Act, and every one of those you're going to spend a year in Leavenworth. So you can either tell us what's going on, or we can see what happens. And I just think that's what you need to do. And those are the perfect people to address with, because they don't really have a public. Nobody cares who Morens is. Nobody cares who Moore is. Nobody cares who Shimabukuro is. They're not going to get the public support on CNN that a Fauci or a Collins would get. And so I
Exactly.
think, they're Al Capone's accountant. You know what I mean? That's exactly who
Exactly.
I would go after if I was a prosecutor.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I appreciate as a parent of a severely autistic child is the fact that Secretary Kennedy has brought this to the forefront. And the numbers are abysmal. When you look at the incidence of autism being 1 in 31, and we know that states that have better counting are probably better, more accurate in terms of assessing those numbers, like California. It's 1 in 20 in California and 1 in 12 boys. Absolutely cataclysmic. I mean, we cannot keep this. This is absolutely unsustainable. By the year 2030, we will be spending over $1 trillion just taking care of children and adults with autism in our community. If you look at the way that the mainstream media is portraying this right now, it's more like nerds get lucky, nerds get a diagnosis, or the normalization of autism on the television, like The Good Doctor. Oh, wow, and you think, wow, my son should be so autistic. But yet instead, we've got children who are in chronic pain, children that can't function on their own. 87% of the autistics that have been diagnosed, this is a number that I've quoted several times, will need supplemental support for the rest of their life, for their rest of their lifetime. And about 25% will need 24/7 care. I mean, that's what we're looking for right now for my son, is that he will not be able to hold down a job. He will not be able to sustain and support himself. And so we need answers right away. And, the fact that, Secretary Kennedy is leaving no stone unturned, that is, that's heartening for me. Yeah, maybe there's backlash, for the high functioning autistic crowd that can go to Vegas and count cards. I'm sorry, that's not my life.
And it's not the life for most people. It really isn't. And I
Right.
think that, that's something that I think that was a bit of a a vain attempt on the part of
Right.
the apologist, because too many of us know uh, individuals, family members, friends of our family, um, that have autism, and we know that it's not Rain Man, and and quite frankly, even in that movie, Rain Man doesn't have a normal life. He's got a
No.
very constrained life, and so people know that that's nonsense. And I think that the important thing is that it's out there, and I'm working on an essay right now, hopefully out in a few days, and what it really focuses on here, just to dovetail a little bit over to vaccines, is that the bloom is off the rose with this stuff. The
Right.
genie's out of the bottle. Pandora's box is open for the pharmaceutical companies, whether you want to admit it or not. You're never stuffing the genie back in this bottle. People know that, and I talk to my patients all the time, and I only have adult patients, but people know that there's something very rotten in Denmark when it comes to the whole vaccine industry. There's no question about it. Not everybody thinks that way. And unfortunately, a lot of people in my profession are in total and complete denial about it. They just have not come to terms with it at all. But the average public citizen, even just the total normie, knows that something is very wrong here. And, that's what, and the reason they know that something is wrong is because something is wrong, and it's finally been made public enough, and it's finally been stated by people in a position of authority, so that it's okay to realize that. And once we get to that point, we really have to act. And I really encourage people also, don't wait for Bobby to fix this for you. Don't wait for Donald Trump to fix this for you. You know, all of us that feel that these are important issues should have all of our elected officials. It doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans or what.
That's right.
All of your elected officials, from your town supervisor on up, should be on speed dial, and you should be sending them something every week saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. send them a link to something that they need to look at, and just absolutely, shower them with A, information about these things, and B, with your presence, with your concern. And get your family members to do this too. Get your friends to do this too. This makes a huge difference. The cat's out of the bag, and this is something that all of us need to act on.
We really do. One of the things that has really opened my eyes is the experience in West Texas around the measles and how the Texas DSHS has blocked anything regarding how to treat the measles, how to prevent the spread of measles. Everything has just gone down and boiled down to vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. And the mainstream press will not pick it up if it does not follow that particular narrative. The two deaths that we followed of Kaylee Fair and Daisy Hildebrand, where both are clear cases of medical error that caused those deaths, and they were not deaths that were caused by the measles, and they could have definitely been prevented. But now, we're getting overtures at Children's Health Defense from mayors of municipalities that want to know how to deal with this. We're getting overtures from individuals that are saying, look, all my kids got the MMR vaccine. As soon as the scare came out, they're still getting the measles. We're hearing that story over and over and over again. And so things are coming to light, and I'm seeing sort of a grassroots effort down there where people are really holding their public officials to account. And, I'm encouraged by it. Nobody wants to see anybody die. Nobody wants to see anybody get sick or debilitated. But, because of this, obvious attack on Secretary Kennedy, more and more people are starting to stand up. More and more people are starting to wake up.
Absolutely. I mean, you were right in the thick of it, and I applaud you for the work that you did in West Texas. I mean, it was really tremendous work, and I'm sure most of your viewers are aware of it, but you really deserve kudos for that. That was that was real field work. So congratulations and great work on that. But, my take on it is this. My take on it is that the line's drawn, and every time I see this type of just malfeasance, whether it's with bird flu, whether it's with the measles, it makes me more and more confident. Not that I really doubt it now at this late date, 5 years since COVID started. I'm just as sure as I can be that I'm on the right side, that we're on the right side. To take it away from measles, go back to bird flu for a minute, to slaughter in the most cruel fashion you can imagine millions of birds under ridiculous false pretenses, then collect the profits when the egg prices rise because of a shortage in laying hens, and say it was the flu that killed the birds. I mean, that's pretty diabolical, Brian, don't you think?
Absolutely. Seeing the way that they were slaughtered. Yeah.
And then you do the
Incredible. Yeah, go ahead.
same doggone thing in West Texas. You have this small outbreak, and what do? You mistreat the rare cases that get genuinely sick, and then you just push, excessive and unnecessary vaccination on the population. It's just malfeasance after malfeasance after malfeasance. These are not good people. These are not people that are even willing to cover their tracks. These are people that are, they're kind of bitter enders, and we really need to take them. We need to hold them accountable. We need to get them out of any kind of position of authority in our society.
Absolutely. And there's so many suspicious things that are going on in West Texas. The DSHS has never released strain information. Neither do we know who patient 0 was in Gaines County, Texas. We don't know that information. They haven't been forthcoming. And then, I finally got frustrated trying to just email DSHS to ask direct questions. So I FOIA'd the emails around the measles outbreak, and I got a blanket statement that said all of these emails are confidential. I'm like, well, this is not right. This is from public officials. None of it really should be confidential. But yet I got a blanket statement from a Texas DSHS attorney saying that they would not release the documents, that they were confidential. and they were a matter of attorney-client privilege. I'm like, well, okay, if that's attorney-client privilege, then tell me at least who lawyered up. I mean, why are they, what is going on in Texas DSHS that they have to lawyer up in order to protect this information that's going on? So, it's very suspicious. The lack of transparency, even between the state level and the federal level is really, really astounding. And these bad actors, like you said, they need to be exposed. They need to be held to account for what's going on. And, just withholding things like information on how you treat somebody that ends up with a secondary bacterial infection and a pneumonia from the measles.
Well, that's one of the real, just to follow up on that statement. One of the things that is, as a practicing physician, that this doesn't account for all cases, and it certainly doesn't account for all deaths. But with so many of these respiratory viruses, it comes down to death comes down to so often a secondary atypical bacterial or bacterial lung infection.
Right.
And so the notion that you're not constantly on the lookout for a bacterial pneumonia or an atypical bacterial pneumonia in these cases it's bizarre. And
it is.
It's not incompetence. One of the great original psyops, and I think it goes back at least to Machiavelli in some form or another, is never assume malice when incompetence explains someone's actions. I think that's untrue. I think what we're seeing now again is malice, 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 malice. And then when they get caught, they say, oh, well, we didn't know. I mean, how many times have we heard the Leanna Wen type folks say, well, we did the best we could with the data that we had at the time. And that's said in the same breath of, Anthony Fauci and Collins saying we have to do a swift and devastating takedown of Jay Bhattacharya and friends. It's malice, not 24/7. It's almost never incompetence. And, frankly, they're not mutually exclusive anyway. So these people may screw up too, but I think we have to stop assuming that these folks are acting because they don't know what they're doing. I think that it's the track record is too often that they do know what they're doing and they're doing the wrong thing.
Right. And they targeted a very innocent community. I mean, being down there with the Mennonite community, they're not, there is nothing about the Mennonite religion that says that they cannot vaccinate their children. A lot of the children were vaccinated. A lot of the children ended up getting vaccinated because of the measles scare. But a lot of the families made the choice because it's a tight-knit community and they know who their vaccine injured are. I mean, they brought them to us. We saw 12 different families of vaccine injured children that day, the same day that we interviewed the Fair family regarding their daughter passing away from hospital error after she got the measles. And so, the community is tight-knit. They know what's going on. And we saw astounding incidents of MMR vaccine injury. And, and that really, that is what swayed them. They're not stupid. They're not, these are intelligent people that are making the best decisions for their family, because they're alternative decisions than, the hospital staff. We heard over and over again when we talked to the parents of these families, of those that were hospitalized and died, those that were hospitalized and released, they were treated differently. They were treated under quarantine. They were treated as if they were dirty. At one point, a girl had thrush because she was severely immunocompromised, and they dismissed it to bad oral hygiene. And it was, it was like they brushed over those things that they should have been looking for because it was much more easy and it was much more convenient to fit the narrative that these were measles deaths.
Absolutely. And I think that, you were right in the middle of it. So, but I will tell you, just in ordinary practice right now, I had a patient who, unbeknownst to me, was admitted to hospital for COVID, did just fine.
Right.
And still got 3 days of remdesivir.
Oh my goodness.
How anybody, I was absolutely gobsmacked to hear this. How anybody's still using remdesivir at this late date is absolutely beyond me. And it just continues. I think that it's a very sad statement about my profession right now. Just the
Right.
sort of intransigence and willful ignorance and dismissiveness, um, which is to a more of an extent than I would have admitted 5 or 6 years ago. I was aware of it, but it is built in to some extent into the allopathic medical tradition. It's like we're the physicians, and you're the, it goes back to the old physicians guild.
Right.
Here we are, the educated person who can stare at your urine in a vial and tell you what's wrong with you, and here you are, this peasant that is lucky to have our attention for a brief period of time. And I think that that's somewhat baked in the cake in medicine, and that needs to change. But I think
Mhm.
also doctors are just taught doctrine. They're taught doctrine. They're not taught anything other than that. You diagnose X, you treat it with Y. You diagnose A, you treat it with B. And that's just the way it is. And you're conditioned to do that, because if you don't
Right.
do that, if you don't follow the protocols, then you're told that you're at risk of being sued, or you don't get your bonus, or you don't you get punished in some other way. And we really need to change that so that people truly do practice independently. And that's going to be a heavy lift, because so many doctors now are indoctrinated in this system, and so many of them are employees.
Exactly. Well, and I have a whole lot of hope for the future. I think that, this is the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing in the first 100 days of the Trump administration and of Make America Healthy Again. And so, I do see good change coming. I do see paradigms changing where there are medical systems now that are being proposed and are on the ground where, natural practitioners are collaborating with allopathic practitioners, that there's more of a collaborative effort going on, that patient management is becoming more caring, more concerned about the individual patient. The thing that was astounding about West Texas, was going through these hospital records and seeing the astounding lack of curiosity that these practitioners had on these patients who were severely declining. They were under severe decline. And it seemed like if you were really that caring and that concerning about the well-being of your patient, you would start to throw the kitchen sink at them. That did not happen in these instances. That did not happen in these cases. And so, it's nice to be able to expose that to the light of day. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. One of the first analyses that we had with Pierre Corey and Dr. Ben Edwards actually achieved about 1.4 million hits on Twitter. And I was really, really encouraged by that, because you want people to know the truth. You want people to know what's the real story, what really is happening.
Absolutely, and that's the only way to do it, is to independently investigate it and get the word out. That's absolutely what you have to do. I think that the windows shifted. As I said,
Right.
I'm working on my little contribution to try and point that out. But I really encourage anybody who watches this, you really need to have your family and friends and your elected officials and so on speed dial, and just feed them this information. Just feed it to them. Just feed it to them. They won't look at
They
all of
need to
it. They'll
know.
look at some of it, and they just need to get a constant supply of it until the window shifts for them. When we look into something and we research it, we have a tendency to assume that it's common knowledge. And if you talk to 3 or 4 people that know the same thing, you tend to assume that everyone knows this. But the limitation, even today, with all of the social media and all of the exchange of information, particularly with the censorship that's gone on, um, most people have just the vaguest notion of it's like the old Bob Dylan song, something is happening but you don't know what it is, and that's
Right.
kind of where a lot of people are. And I think just pushing this stuff out, this is why things like memes are so effective, because they're just memorable, and they get people to think about things. And it's funny how things, and I'm not a memer, but it's funny how
Mhm.
memes don't really work for the other side, because memes don't kind of work as a lie. They only work when you're kind of telling the truth for some reason. I won't say that universally, but it's largely true. And we just need to get the message out there. The messaging has to be that your individual rights are paramount. And your right to
Exactly.
say no if you don't want to take a treatment is paramount. And it doesn't make you a kook, and it doesn't make you an idiot, and it doesn't make you stupid. It makes you discerning. Now, you may be wrong sometimes, you may be right some of the time. Frankly, your track record over the last 5 years is going to be pretty darn good, if you said no more often than yes. But that's really one of the key things. And, IMA, Independent Medical Alliance, the old FLCCC, we're really working very hard on, sort of the medical freedom stuff. And there was another big win at the state level, with Leslie Manukian and friends out in Idaho pushing
Right.
through a very strong medical freedom act there. And that's something I just spoke with her the other day about, ways that perhaps we can make that happen in other states. You get a half a dozen states that have a strong medical freedom act out there, or you get a couple of states out there that ban mRNA products, and the feds almost have to play along, because you can't have a calico tablecloth of laws to that extent very easily.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, Clayton, tell us what's coming up for you. You're part of IMA, the Independent Medical Alliance. What can we be looking at from you here near in the future, looking out over the horizon? And then also, again, let's talk about your book, The Medical Masquerade. This is a series of wonderful essays and other writings that you've done, and they can get it at Amazon, Lulu, and Barnes and Noble. You can't have my copy because I have 2 copies and I already have 1 committed to give away.
Thank you again for that plug. I appreciate it. I'm still writing a lot for Brownstone. That's kind of my main outlet. That's
Right.
published the book. You and I have been bouncing around a couple of ideas to collaborate some more on, so we'll be working on that. And I'm
Right.
always pleased to have any interactions with Children's Health Defense that I can. I love working with you guys. Independent Medical Alliance is working through some other channels to try and support the MAHA movement. And a lot of that is also at the state level. And I would also, there's probably not time in this conversation, but I'd really encourage people to, you can reach out to Independent Medical Alliance and get involved in that as well. But there's a lot of movements to get ivermectin over the counter in several states,
Right.
to get mRNA banned in several states, medical freedom laws in several states, and geoengineering in 35 states right now. And that's kind of
Incredible.
it, from my mind, kind of, and CHD has done a great job of being involved in that issue as well, which is a huge health issue. All these toxins they're spraying over our head every night and day. But there's literally 35 states where there's state bills at some stage of development to fight the geoengineering. So the state level is really, really important, because the feds cannot. Number one, they can't do everything, and number two, they can't ignore it when the momentum really builds at the state level.
Exactly. And another battle that I want to point out is the state of Massachusetts, where there are bills really to get rid of their exemptions, except for the medical exemption on vaccination. So we really need to look at Massachusetts. We really need to look at New Jersey. There are already always bad actors, especially in these states that have. And I'm not political, but this is the Democratic trifecta states are the ones where they're looking at, like they tried in Hawaii, and they'll continue to try in Hawaii, to get rid of the religious exemptions to opt out of vaccination. So we need to keep these states in our crosshairs.
Well, I think the other thing that's important about that is I think that, I don't have a lot of confidence in our Supreme Court right now, but I do
Right.
have to say that from a religious standpoint, we may be in a stronger position than we are in some other aspects of it. And so I think that really challenging this is really important as well. And that may be something where it's simply in a state that is a blue trifecta state. It's probably got to go through the courts because the legislation's all going to go in the wrong direction.
That is correct. Absolutely. So, well, Clayton, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure. I think that we should make this a tradition and at least see each other every 100 days so we can get an update on Make America Healthy again.
I'd be delighted to do that. I'll pencil it in right now.
Alrighty. Thanks again. And thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Doctors and Scientists. You heard it here first. Buy the book, tell your friends, and have a great Friday.
Oh, we're live and we're trying to sort this family out. This is Remy's family. Many of you remember we did that story. That beautiful child there. This is the family. All right, let's go round and find out who everybody is, okay? So let's start with you. What's your name?
Faith.
Pardon?
Faith.
And how old are you, Faith?
11.
11. What's your name?
Skylar.
How old are you?
13.
Good voice. Good voice. Nice and loud. What's your name?
Grace.
And how old's Grace?
3.
What's your name?
Hope.
Hope. Hope. And how old are you?
5.
And what's your name?
Serenity.
And how old are you?
She is about to be 5 months old.
She's so cute. What's your name?
I'm Charlie.
How old are you?
8.
What's your name?
My name is Gabe and I'm 15.
Another good voice. What's your name?
Eddie.
And how old are you?
7.
And what's your name?
Savannah.
I won't ask you how old you are. What's your name?
John.
Alright, so this is Remy's family. Some of you will remember. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about this. To what degree is up to you right now. But who wants to talk? Mum?
Sure.
Go ahead. Nice big voice because there's so many of you.
We are a family of 10 kids. One of those 10 kids is our baby Remy. He passed away in 2019 at 2 months old. Our oldest daughter, she's not here. She is about to be 16 and her name's Destiny. So she's the only kid we're missing.
Okay.
And we took Remy to his 2-month appointment on August 8th of 2019. He fell asleep in the doctor's office, asleep. He screamed bloody murder for 5 minutes, fell unconscious and never woke up again. We took him in and out of his car seat several times that day. I last checked on him at 12:45 in the morning, and he wouldn't wake up. He wasn't hungry. He would just stir. He wouldn't open his eyes. And by 2 a.m. he was gone.
So how old would Remy be if he was here with us?
In between these two.
4.
So you older children, do you remember this?
Yes, ma'am.
You do? So, and you've obviously been vaccinated along with you and you. Now, how many of you have had no vaccines at all because of Remy?
Squishy and Serenity.
Which one's Squishy?
Gracie.
Gracie and Serenity. The only two that have had nothing.
Yep.
And can you, with all due respect, so all of your children are loved exactly the same, okay? So that's not what we're talking about right now. But can you see the difference in the ones that have had shots and the ones that haven't?
Absolutely. We have our oldest daughter. She has seizures. She's epileptic. We have a pending autism diagnosis. We have an explosive disorder. This one was 14 months the day that Remy got shot. She also got shots 2 months to the day.
I thought that was her.
No. She got her first MMR at 14 months old. We missed the 12 month. She lost the ability to sit. She lost the ability to stand. She lost eye contact. She lost the ability to hold her bottle. And this was a 14-month-old baby that was walking and talking and feeding herself, and it was just all gone. And then 2 months to the day, she stopped breathing in her sleep. And her outlet went off, and I gave her CPR and I had to run across the street. We were transferred to the ICU for a week with her. Her white blood cell, her white counts were bottom line. She had no muscle tone. She needed several blood transfusions. And even after Remy passing away, they still try to tell me that it was because of cow's milk. That they completely dismissed that the vaccines killed her brother, even though the autopsy said that. and that was what caused her to quit breathing in her sleep at 15 months old, 16 months old at that time.
Do any of you kids go to school?
All of them except Squishy and Serenity.
Yeah, Grace and Serenity going 2 miles.
So do any of you, what happened during COVID when everyone was getting the COVID shot? Do any of you get any kind of bullying or anything going on there? You just said you did. What happened?
I got bullied by one of my friends. One of my friends was named Gerald, and the other one was named Ken, and they both bullied me every time at the playground.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Name and shame, my boy. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's not okay. I'm sure Mum and Dad will sort that out. So the unvaccinated kids compared to the others, how's their health? Because we're led to believe that that's not going to have a good outcome. How's it been? If you pull those down, Anu will be after you. Just so you know, he's our technical director.
As far as Grace, like I said, she's 3 and she's had no vaccines or anything, and she hasn't been sick. No ear infections, no.
All of our children have been readmitted to the hospital as infants for one reason or another.
Yeah.
RSV, failure to thrive,
Ear infections, earaches.
pneumonia,
Yeah.
for one reason or another, all of our children had been readmitted as infants except these 2.
Like I said,
They've never been sick. I think they might have had a couple runny noses. We had the flu back in November of last year, so everybody got the flu. Still don't regret not getting the shot. But other than that, I mean, they're advanced, they're happy, they're healthy. People can't believe how alert she is. From day old, she's been super alert, super happy.
She's smiling all the time, this one,
She
isn't
really
she?
is.
how active she is for her age.
But don't you find what I'm seeing with the unvaxxed babies, we don't have all that high-pitched scream or that
No.
sort of
She
colicky
never cries.
stuff. It's just, this is how they're meant to be. Yeah, I'm so having a cuddle with her. You're all adorable. Right, I'm going to ask you all a question. When you grow up, what would you like to be? And then Mum and Dad is going to give some advice to the young parents and the summary of your Vax study. All right, who wants to go first? Let's start with the guy with the good voice at the back. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to serve the army like my dad.
Okay, you watch those vaccines though. Okay. All right, what do you want to be? You can think about it a bit longer. What do you want to be?
Opie.
Elsa.
Elsa? Princess? We'll give you a little bit more time before you have to decide. What do you want to be?
A scientist dinosaur.
Paleontologist.
Okay, there's another one. There's a few of those coming out today. And what do you want to be?
A diesel mechanic in the army or a mechanical engineer.
Okay, great. Except for, guys, I'm going to warn you on this. The military's great. We need strong people. But you've got to get yourself lawyered up because you're not going in taking those shots, okay? Do we understand?
Dad's still in the military and he hasn't had a shot since 2019.
So, Dad is going to help you get through it, okay? It can be done.
Yes.
What do you want to be when you grow up? You've got plenty of time to decide. Well, I think that sounds like fun times ahead for this family. And we are... Oh, what would you like to be?
I want to either be a teacher or work at daycare because I love kids.
Sounds perfect. Now, we're never going to forget Remy. Remy is here with us. I want to thank you for telling the world your story and warning the parents about what happened to your beautiful, beautiful family. And Remy was taken from you, and that's not okay. And that's why we fight on and we tell these stories. So has anybody got anything else they want to say? Mama, Dada?
Don't blindly follow what the doctors say. They do not have your best interest at heart, and health will never come in the form of a needle. My 2 babies that are poison free, they are my healthiest babies. They are my happiest babies. And vaccines destroyed my family.
They certainly did. Well, you're an amazing family. We thank you so much for all of you being here. I hope you all went and got a t-shirt. They're giving a very kind donor has done it so you can all get a t-shirt each.
Awesome.
All right,
We
so
lost
please-
all of our movies and our t-shirts in the house fire.
I know they had a house fire. They've lost everything. Well, thank you so much, and much love from us all.